What you're watching right now is an actual parade float right now during Mardi Gras in New Orleans with Hillary Clinton choking out Jeffrey Epstein in the front of this vehicle. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Okradowski of WeAreChange.org. Before we get into all the latest updates about Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, pedo Pinocchio, Prince Andrew, as some people call him, the main premise of this video will, of course, be about the betrayal of the free press and free speech by the executive office. And before we get into one of the most important court proceedings happening right now, and also court proceedings that should be happening and are not, I wanted to remind everyone, because we talk about these kind of important issues, we many times are targets of deranking, censorship, demonetization by YouTube for, of course, just talking about and having a conversation about these issues. To offset us getting hit, we started making T-shirts, which you could buy and support this independent media broadcast at the same time, while wearing really cool T-shirts and hats like this one, and getting the message out there to the general public. This is one of our newest shirts that I'm particularly proud of. Definitely will be buying one of those myself. The link to our store, which also has stickers and phone cases and many other things, will be in the description below. For the people who do support us this way, sincerely, thank you very much. Now, of course, the very important court proceeding that will have grave implications about the free press that I'm talking about is, of course, the extradition case that is happening right now of Julian Assange of WikiLeaks, which is going into its fourth day. A very important case that doesn't just have to deal with if Julian Assange will be deported to the United States and face charges in a court system where the prosecutors have a 100% conviction rate, but most importantly, this is a case that impacts international law, since Julian Assange is an Australian citizen, not an American one, who of course is the founder of WikiLeaks, and because of what he and WikiLeaks did, he's facing 18 charges of hacking and espionage in the United States. Now, if you've been following our videos and coverage of this story already, the court proceedings against Julian Assange have been gravely unfair for many years. He, by the way, has already done his time for the bail violation, which he was sentenced double the normal sentence for, that he already finished and should be out there for free, but he's still being held, even though he hasn't been convicted of any other charges in the United Kingdom. He, of course, was held up in the Ecuadorian embassy, telling everyone that if he would leave, the United States would try to grab him and arrest him, with many people saying that he was a crazy conspiracy theorist for even thinking that would happen, and that's exactly what happened. Except he didn't leave. He was forcefully dragged out after the United States negotiated with Ecuador and the United Kingdom to forcibly remove him from his sanctuary inside the Ecuadorian embassy. And now, Julian Assange's team is complaining about the unfairness of the court proceedings that are happening now, claiming that they were spied on and couldn't set up a proper legal defense. Now, the fact that Julian Assange was spied on is no secret. There's been tapes of him in very personal matters, even publicly talked about and even questioned to be sold. There's been many intelligence agency contractors that have committed illegal actions inside of the Ecuadorian embassy, and all of that information, of course, presents an extreme uphill battle, since, of course, Julian Assange particularly angered the deep state with many of his leaks and releases. Assange's lawyers are also claiming that the United States wanted to kill the WikiLeaks founder and to make it look like an accident, and this, again, wouldn't be a surprise, since, of course, even Hillary Rodham Clinton talked about how she wanted Assange assassinated and drone bombed. But she doesn't need to, because of the pressure right now pushed on by the U.S. Executive Office, by the White House, to imprison Julian Assange for the rest of his life. And U.S. prosecutors are claiming many wild claims about Julian Assange without presenting much actual evidence of, but accusing him of risking lives of informants and even personally aiding and abetting Osama bin Laden. Yeah, they literally pulled out the Osama bin Laden card out of their back pocket advocate, Tim Osman, you know, a former CIA asset that was, quote, a freedom fighter in Afghanistan against the Russians. He, by the way, also fought in Europe on the American side. Even after that, he had kidney dialysis in 2001. Again, they're pulling the Osama bin Laden card against Assange when, of course, this case couldn't be more sensational than it already is. Assange's lawyers are, of course, fighting back and are citing that Assange even gave a phone call to the White House to warn them of a potential risk to lives of informants after the Guardian newspaper released some documents that they weren't supposed to. The Guardian, of course, is rejecting these claims, but there's even a documentary with Assange specifically talking publicly in interviews about how he called the White House. There's even video footage of him calling the White House, warning them about a potential danger to some of their assets, which of course the White House at that time ignored. And Assange's lawyers are specifically claiming, and again, I remember seeing even videos of this, that he called the White House, asked to speak to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton as a, quote, matter of urgency over fears that documents that were about to be dumped online by a third party who gained access to them, and Assange was told to call back in a few hours. And I particularly remember Assange in this video being like, I don't understand why they don't see the urgency in this. And now for the U.S. government to say that he was mainly responsible for this, I mean, is definitely something that should be strongly thought about and debated by the judge who is proceeding over this case. And it could really go either way here, but knowing how the deep state operates, it definitely looks like Assange will be extradited back to the United States, where, of course, he will most likely be in prison for the rest of his life. And we have to ask ourselves, just like Tucker Carlson, one of the few people who's willing to step away from all the other mind control of mainstream media and actually ask the question, what is Julian Assange's crime? And of course, as Tucker points out, he embarrassed everyone in power. He humiliated the deep state, and he actually did what journalists should do: gain information and release it to the general public, exposing torturers, war criminals, and kleptocrats everywhere. He shook the system, rocked it to its core, and released information to you that you would never see if it wasn't for him. He gave us transparency. Maybe not in a perfect, pristine way that everyone expects him to be. Yes, of course, there's ego involved here as well. There's some personality defaults, but when you look at face value of what Assange did, he essentially did what Watergate did, what muckrakers did, what any person who cared about the truth did, and that is present it to the general public. And it looks like he's going to go down and be punished because of it by Donald Trump himself and his new intel chief, which of course makes a very solid case that this prosecution of Assange is very political, which it is. This is not a story of a crime. This is a story of dirty politics trying to hurt someone for exposing how dirty it is. Now, when we look at the deep state or the U.S. intelligence, they of course hold vast power and influence, not only puppeteering the majority of the mainstream media, but also calling a lot of the shots behind the scenes. As the new acting D&I chief that Trump just appointed came out, was the one that directly took orders from Donald Trump and negotiated with Ecuador and the UK government in order to drag out Assange from the embassy and have him arrested. There's a leaked call by Cassandra Fairbanks with, of course, a GOP operative, someone that people consider a Trump family fixer. And in this phone call with Cassandra Fairbanks, he confirms the new U.S. spy chief, when he was still working as an ambassador, took direct orders from President Trump in order to secure the arrest of WikiLeaks publisher Julian Assange. And then after, as ambassador of Germany, being able to successfully do this, he has now been promoted as the D&I chief. And as the information provided to us, all of this went down in October of 2018, which of course exposes this to be an international case of dirty politics and not one of right and wrong. But essentially, it points out something that, of course, a lot of people do not want to hear, especially supporters of Donald Trump, and that is that Donald Trump betrayed Julian Assange and WikiLeaks and the free press and free speech in this country, which is threatened by this very important court case. Because if Assange goes down, it essentially sets a very dangerous precedent in this country that criminalizes journalism. And when that happens, whenever someone reports on something the government doesn't want them to report on, they will now have a legal case that can imprison them for the rest of their life for doing the simple act of journalism. Now, as the United States prosecutors are pulling all the stops, putting all the pressure on Julian Assange under the orders of Donald Trump, who's being funneled a ridiculous amount of money from Saudi Arabia and other special interest groups, we still have the open cover-up of Jeffrey Epstein that is filled with lies, erroneous information provided by the government, and just top-down secrecy on this case that has many people who are involved here, like Ghislaine Maxwell, who are still free, on the run, and not even interviewed by the federal authorities that were allegedly investigating this international child abuse ring that hurt thousands of children with the protection of the government. Prince Andrew, still walking around, free, able to do whatever he wants, and he's celebrating his 60th birthday with a star-studded attendance of all these other insane people who want to celebrate a pedo Pinocchio prince, who, by the way, didn't just have one friend that had a private island and little children around that were abused, but two, as another friend of Prince Andrew is now being investigated and had his headquarters raided by the FBI amongst investigations of sex trafficking. Another powerful individual connected to very other powerful individuals like Oprah Winfrey, the Bushes, all these other celebrities, all these other technocrats, which again allowed them to commit heinous acts on private islands where, of course, there was no U.S. jurisdiction to legally go after them. Prince Andrew, by the way, also has his alibi questioned by many of the royal protection officers in the United Kingdom that cast doubt on his official story that, of course, doesn't add up, that many people cast doubt on, where, of course, his alibi, that he didn't do anything with Virginia Roberts, is just absolutely a farce. And now we're getting even more witnesses claiming that, yeah, they saw the two kissing, holding hands on, of course, the infamous Jeffrey Epstein Island. And even though there's witnesses, even though there's former royal protection, even though there's photos, even though there's evidence, even though there's everything that you could possibly imagine that could put any average Joe Schmo away for a very long time, Prince Andrew is still free, with the UK authorities saying that they're not interested in interviewing him and not interested in even investigating or looking into this case. Again, rampant abuse of children, and the authorities, the police, the government saying, we just don't care. And when it comes to these FBI raids, we have to understand that there are a lot of photos, there are a lot of videos, as confirmed by Virginia Roberts, that talks about how Jeffrey Epstein had every single room on every one of his properties rigged up with cameras, and the abused victims claims that the FBI has these videos and still hasn't done anything with them. And in reality, they're part of another intelligence agency extortion ring, which most likely was linked back to them in the first place. And through more of these raids, I expect more of the same, since again, the federal authorities for over a decade not only allowed, but protected Epstein from actually getting in trouble from some of the worst, most heinous actions that a human being could commit in this world. Now, I know what I'm saying is surprising to most, but it's surprising to me sometimes, even just talking about it. It's definitely risky even bringing all of this information up, but it's something that the people need to be made aware of. And if Assange is brought down, it's only going to be more dangerous for me and many others to speak these truths to you. So yeah, Assange definitely needs our support, regardless of what you think of the man, regardless of any personality faults he has, and of course everyone has some, but regardless of all of that, this is a case that essentially will determine the trajectory of this country, whether it will be one of free speech and free press, or one of subjugation by child-abusing intelligence agencies that are connected to Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein, and other horrible monsters who never went down for the horrible crimes that they committed against the most vulnerable in our society. That's my take on it. Let me know what you think in the comment section below if you think I missed an important aspect of this. Thank you so much for keeping us alive by simply getting some of our merchandise. Thank you so much for allowing this video to go out there. It means so much to me to have people watching the videos all the way up to the very end. It matters hugely for us. And because you still are here, because we're still here because of you, this is why I love you guys. Thank you again so much for watching. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org.